Good morning. I would like to, first of all, thank Pastor Saki and Sonia for the opportunity to share my testimony with you. And may your hearts be open to receive everything that the Lord has done in my life. I'm going to play a quick intro video before I get started. I want you to please forgive me for speaking English with a surname like Labuschagne. My ancestors were part of the French Huguenots, who due to religious persecution fled France and settled in the Cape between 1688 and 1691. A total of 178 families on 4 ships. In 1913, my great-grandfather trekked from Daar, over 1,000 miles, to a little place called West Nicholson in southern Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. And that's where my life started, from humble beginnings as a 4th-generation Zimbabwean in a cattle ranching background. And that's where I lost my Afrikaans. I'm going to start off by sharing a little bit of my life before prison, and then the incident, then the horrendous conditions that I endured during my time in prison, mixed with a few life lessons, and then the main life lessons that I learned during my time in prison, and how the Lord has had His hand on my life all the way through, and I didn't know it. I'll be about an hour, and then I'll be open for a bit of questions and answers if you feel. Let me highlight the contrast of my life before I got sent to prison. So I was living the good life. I worked hard, I played hard, and I was an avid sportsman, playing several rugby tests for Zimbabwe too. I lived what you might call a very successful life with numerous thriving businesses. I was so busy being successful though, that after 14 years, my marriage fell apart. And I no longer lived under the same roof as my beloved children. I missed them terribly. But through making the right business decisions, by the year 2000, life couldn't have been better for this farm boy who grew up dirt poor. I was extremely happy, making plenty of money in my safari business. I was flying my own aircraft, had a fishing resort on the shores of beautiful Lake Kariba in Zimbabwe, flashy cars, houseboats, speedboats, you name it. And to top it off, I was engaged to a beautiful woman. Then in an instant, my world was turned upside down. It all started one weekend in December 2000 when I went on a fishing trip with some friends to my fishing resort on Lake Kariba. Late one afternoon, one of my mates and I decided to go tiger fishing on the lake, leaving the other guys bream fishing in the river. And on our way back, we spotted 2 fish poachers in a steel boat, who immediately upon seeing us, started paddling hastily for the shore in an effort to get away from us. knowing they were notorious poachers, I drove my boat towards them to scare them off, and the wake of my boat tilted their boat, causing them to jump out into the water, which was about 1.5 meters deep. They were about 3 meters from the shore and soon scrambled to dry land. My friend and I then watched as they ran away into the bush and thought nothing more of it. The following day, the police arrived with one of the poachers and accused us of drowning the other one. To cut a long story short, I was framed by the poacher, the police, and the courts in an ugly, politically influenced conspiracy and sentenced to 15 years in Zimbabwe's prisons, of which 5 were removed as remission. Unbelievably, my co-accused only got a $10 fine and was set free because he was not driving the boat. And that's exactly as it was stated in the judgment. The 3rd of April 2003, click the slide for me, it's not going. Oh, there you go. On the 3rd of April 2003, during the height of the land invasion chaos in Zimbabwe, against police evidence, without a body, and on presumptions, I was convicted of drowning that poacher. The shock was inexpressible. I was innocent. I was a successful, self-made businessman with a high standing in the community. You can only imagine what was going through my mind when they read out that verdict. But what I didn't know then was from that moment on, my life would never be the same again. For the first 8 years, only one set of clothing was allowed at any one time. A standard white short-sleeved shirt and a pair of drawstring white shorts. Underwear was forbidden. After 6 months, you got a change of clothing. Sometimes. Other times after 9 months, leaving us walking around in tatters. I shared a cell 13 meters long by 3 meters wide with 78 other inmates. Each person had 33 centimeters, 13 inches, marked out on the walls in chalk. That was your space. The toilet was a stainless steel bowl sunk into an open 1 meter square cement block in one corner, as you can see in my sketch up there. We were packed like sardines on our sides, with legs all crossing over in the middle. And we all faced the same direction. When you turned over, it was all together. As cushioning against the cold concrete floor, you'd fold 2 of your paper-thin, worn-out, lice-ridden blankets several times to fit your space, then covered yourself with a 3rd one. Your clothes were wrapped around your toothbrush and toothpaste, well, that gets stolen, and that was your pillow. From sleeping on those freezing hard floors, my hips had bruised black rings for years, and shoulders still give trouble today. Michael, I need you to help me with this thing. I think these batteries are flat or something. There you go. That's just the 13 inches. Okay? During those lonely long years, I'd watch the pigeons day after day. After they'd eaten the pieces of pup off the exercise yard floor, they'd fly over those high razor wire topped walls, and I wished a million times that I could somehow just fly away with them and be free again. And I don't believe there's a prisoner that doesn't think that, because it is the only glimpse of freedom you get to see in there. It's just cold walls, bars, and razor wire. No furniture whatsoever. No beds, no tables, no chairs, no cupboards, nothing. Not even a mirror. I didn't see my face for the first 8 years. It's just rows of filthy folded blankets and hundreds of well-used water bottles on bare concrete floors. For the first 8 years, the worst thing to deal with were the lice. Thousands of them that never went away, ever. They would crawl and bite day and night, leaving itchy, weeping blisters. And because they never stopped, they were draining, both mentally and physically. And there's nothing you could do about it. But I tried. We all did. Spent hours killing them, as you can see in my sketch there. We had no basins or taps in the cells, and only one set of clothing was allowed at any one time. So we had to wash our clothes in the cell toilets at night wearing a blanket, then hang them on the walls with smuggled book staples to dry by the next morning. 3 or 4 of us would take turns to wash our clothes because one garment had to be used to block the toilet to allow the toilet bowl to fill up when attempting to flush. No toilets flushed in any prison I was in. The water only ever dribbled in slowly. And then we'd wash the clothes on the cement blocks surrounding the toilet bowl, dipping them in and out as we washed, as you can see in my sketch there. Not a bad artist, eh? At about 5 a.m., we'd take the slightly damp clothes, place them on a cleanly swept concrete floor, and rub the creases out with a prison-made sponge. Then fold them neatly, place them in a pile, put a hand towel over the pile, and stamp on it hard with bare feet, leaving them perfectly ironed. Another hour hanging on the walls, they'd be ready to wear. In 2005, during the Zimbabwe dollar crash, Harare city ran out of water. For 3 years, while in Chikurubi maximum security prison, each prisoner was allocated only 1 plastic cup of water a day. 1 cup of dirty orange city runoff water from a nearby dam, carried by farm prisoners that were to drink, clean your teeth, wash your face, bath, everything, for 3 years. That's us sitting in formation, waiting for 1 cup a day. I've learned that the most important things in life cannot be bought. Health, loved ones, and friends, in that order. Number 1 is health. Proverbs 17:22. A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. During my first 6 years in prison, I watched over 2,200 guys die. I'll say it again. My first 6 years in prison, I watched over 2,200 guys die. Primarily from malnutrition, disease, and stress. I had every reason to have a crushed spirit. It was during the Zimbabwe dollar crash, when there was no food outside of prison. Never mind in there. After being moved to a medium security prison, during the cholera outbreak of 2008 and 2009, in 8 months, out of 1,200 of us prisoners at Harare Central Prison, 432 guys died. More than 1/3 of us in 8 months. And that triggered something inside me about my health. And I want to challenge every one of you here today to do a rain check on your health. Because once your health is gone, everything else in your life will have no meaning whatsoever. Loved ones, Proverbs 17:17. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity. In my instance, it was my darling sister. In June 2006, the prison death rate was so high from malnutrition and disease that prison headquarters started allowing relatives to deliver food to their loved ones daily. My darling sisters, Bev and Lynn, fed me for 3 months, selling furniture and scraping money from wherever, until Lynn sold her clay pot business and gave up her career just to feed me for 4 more years. That takes a very special person. And I can honestly say that without her, I wouldn't be standing up here today. I'm truly blessed to have her in my life. And unfortunately, very few relatives could financially afford to feed their loved one daily. And I helped as many guys as I could afford to. But the hunger continued for most. Friends, family, love and support sustained me as much as the warm home-cooked food they brought. And friends, Proverbs 27:17, and I love this one. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. There is a special unwritten code that bonds friends like we all share in this part of the world. The warm, caring, and considerate society we make up from all walks of life can never be equaled anywhere. I share treasured memories with thousands of good people in Africa. And it was those memories and their endless generosity, consideration, and knowing what a beautiful bunch of people we still have left here that kept me going all those years in hell. Knowing that one day I'd be traveling around reminding people, including you here today, never to forget the value of your friends. Because only when you have them all taken away do you realize how much they mean to you. After Red Cross had taken over feeding and normality returned in there in March 2009, we began a soccer league. And I was delighted to make the prison squad as a goalkeeper, being a rugby player, giving me the privilege to walk under strict escort to play against the opposite side on a field in their compound. And during our jovial march there, singing all the way with fellow players, I asked one of the guards if I may touch my first tree in 6.5 years. When granted permission, I joyously broke formation and did so. And I clearly remember the roughness of the bark, reminding me of my granddad's forearms, and the distinct smell of that jacaranda tree, which I knew so well. You have no idea how beautiful and uplifting it felt just to touch a tree and feel green grass again. My first evening at Connemara Open Prison, which is a farm prison where I was transferred after 8 years, I spent sitting around an open fire on odd logs and bleached cattle skulls, chatting with old Ndebele inmates, taking me back to what I loved so dearly as a child. And I remember getting lost in the interesting stories and the beauty of the sunset, the dancing flames, tranquil call of a nightjar, and the bright stars and the moon, which I hadn't seen for 8 lonely long years. I never saw a sunset or a sunrise either for my first 8 years. Now, I appreciate the everyday little things in life, like a soft bed, a hot bath, tasty meal, or a spontaneous cuddle from a loved one. Because those are the things you miss most when you have it all taken away. There are things we know that rejuvenate us. And for me, it has always been nature. I am, and will forever be at heart, a farm boy from Zimbabwe. Nature's in my blood. Touching a tree, smelling the earth, the feeling of soil in my hands. These things bring me restoration. And for you, it might be hang out with friends, dancing, reading a good book, or swimming in the ocean. Whatever is good for you, do more of it. Despite the hell I'd gone through, physically and mentally, the worst part was knowing that my beloved children were growing up without me. I told you in the beginning that not living under the same roof as them when my wife and I separated was the hardest thing. Imagine the heartbreak I felt when I went to prison. We have always been extremely close. It is a bond I will cherish and protect to my dying day. My proud son Dusty, only 18 at the time, was always full of ambition. And we'd joyously discuss and dream of making millions and plan endless projects and adventures. He was following in my footsteps and loving every minute of it, ready to take on the world with his dad. And then I was ripped away. My precious 16-year-old daughter Sandy and I had, and still have, an extraordinarily beautiful bond. Since a baby, she's always been my shadow. And especially as she is to me, I am to her. But at 16, I was her anchor. I was everything in her eyes. She confided in me without boundaries and clung to everything I said and did. I loved them beyond expression. They loved me. And the times they needed me most, I wasn't there. They went through first loves, crushes, dances, 21st birthdays, and entered the wild world, and I wasn't there to see it. It is an annoying feeling knowing that I'm their father and should have been there, but I couldn't be. And I don't want anyone here ever to have to feel that way. Make enough time for your loved ones. What I've shared with you so far is probably 3% of my story. The rest you can find in my book. Unfortunately, I'm out of print copies, but on my website, btjames.com, there's digital copies. You can download it. But I want you all to go back 10 years in your life. So think about where you were this time, 2014. Now think about how much you've accomplished in the last 10 years. That's what a big chunk I had taken away. But even in the depth of such horrendous experiences, I knew I had ultimate control of how I chose to feel and respond. Behind every severity lies an opportunity. And that experience gave me the opportunity to get to know hidden attributes about myself and time to consider some really important things in life. My life in chains taught me many lessons, and that's what I'd like to share with you now. How my faith and mental strength got me through there. Romans 8:35 says, can anything ever separate us from Christ's love? Does it mean he no longer loves us if we have trouble or calamity, or are persecuted, or hungry, or destitute, or in danger, or threatened with death. Many of us carry anger and resentment because of unforgiveness. The humiliation of being labeled a murderer. Let me just change that. After being moved to a medium security prison during the cholera outbreak of 2008 and 2009, my sister, whilst delivering food, asked me if I would like an iPod. So I said to her, "What's an iPod?" She said, "It's a thing that plays music." So I said, "Well, how big is it?" And she indicated this small, flat little thing. So I said, "Well, how many songs does it play?" She said, "About 1,000. I said, "No ways. Where do you put all the CDs?" That's a true story. That's how much technology had advanced in just 6 years I'd been away. Anyway, the following day, the iPod arrived under the salad. And about a week later, one of those cheap Nokia cell phones was sneaked in too. It was an exciting, risky business that you couldn't dream of in maximum security prison. And everything was going perfectly until an envious prisoner reported me. After an unexpected search, unbelievably through some quick maneuvering with on-site guards, nothing was discovered. But I was sent to solitary confinement anyway for 2 years. That was extremely lonely. But after experiencing that precious little link to the outside world, I had to get my phone back, and I did, which made a huge difference. 18 months later, everything going perfectly. One of the friendly guards approached my spiral at 5 in the morning and whispered, "Russ, they're coming for your phone." And there's no way of getting a phone out of there. But someone had brought me a protein powder about a month before. And I'd never seen it before. It was a big process to get it in through security and the doctor and whatever. And when I got it, I opened it and broke that silver seal, tasted it. When I put the seal back and closed it, the next time I opened that seal, it stuck. So I thought I'm going to hide my phone in there. So that morning, I opened it, broke the seal, took half the powder out, wrapped the phone in plastic, put it in, put the powder, put the seal. 6 o'clock, the guards arrive. What they do is they make you strip naked, then you jump with your legs open, like you're hiding something. It's a good catcher. And they do the search. After the search, I went back in my cell, and everything is upside down everywhere. But my protein powder is in good shape. 5 minutes later, I'm summoned to the security office. So I walk in there, and there are 4 guards standing, one seated behind a desk, and an empty chair. Now, I'd sat in the chair for 7.5 years. He says, "Take a seat." I sat down, felt good. He said, "Do you have a girlfriend called Karen?" I said, "No." I said, "I had one before prison called Karen." He said, "Okay. When did you last talk to her?" I said, "Long ago, before prison." He said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah." He handed me a letter addressed to me from Karen. So now talking to you on the phone the other night, you sound so positive. I don't know what I did to this thing. So, after some intense questioning, I just said to them, "No." Karen was having lunch in Bulawayo, and she met this lady, and they started chatting, and then soon realized that they both had boyfriends in the same prison. So the lady said, "Well, let me call my boyfriend, there's a guard in there, he can call Russ, and you guys can have a chat." So I used the guard's phone. But after I couldn't tell them what the guard's name was, they didn't buy it. An hour later, I'm escorted up to the officer in charge's office. When you go up there, it's big trouble. And they were waiting, like 16 big brass officers all standing in a half circle, officer in charge behind his big desk, and my empty chair in the middle. He said, "Take a seat." I sat down. He said, "If you don't tell me what that God's name is, your life in this prison is going to change." Him and I got on really well. And I said, "Officer, I don't know his name." And then the question started. How old was the guard? How tall? What rank? Where did you make the call? How long ago did you make the call? And I answered as best I could, and they were getting furious. And then the head of the soccer, very nice officer, He said, do you want to talk to the officer in charge on your own? So I said, yes, please. So open the door, they all leave, close the door. I said, officer, we've both been through hell. We watched hundreds of guys die. I've donated endless stuff to the prison service. Can't we just let this one go? He said, Russ, I don't care about you, but I want that God's name now. He was furious. So I said, well, I don't know his name. I didn't know his name. He says, okay. He calls the officers, they put him on death row in the dark cell. So they escorted me over to the condemned section, and I used to hang guys in those days. And there were 54 cells, 52 were full, 56 cells, 52 were full, guys waiting to be hung. And out of the 4 that were left, one of them was called the dark cell. The cells were 3 meters by 1 meter, about 3 meters high, identical to my solitary confinement, and no window, it was just a vent. And the only vent in the dark cell was covered by a staircase, and the electric light didn't work. So they put oaks in there to break them. They locked me in there. First of all, they made me strip naked. Gave me 3 filthy, worn-out blankets, a 5-liter container, cut off at the top as a toilet, same as solitary, and a liter of water. They locked me in there for 23 hours and 45 minutes a day. So I was allowed out 5 minutes in the morning to clean my teeth, 5 minutes at 10 o'clock to have a shower, 5 minutes at 3 o'clock to prepare for lockup. It was cold, lonely and dark. I couldn't even see my hand, like being buried alive. Desperate, on day 6, I got on my knees and I prayed. And I'll never forget the feeling of like warm water being poured over me and a total sense of calmness. So I sat on the floor, leaning against the wall. Within 30 minutes, I faintly heard my Afrikaans mate shouting from the soccer ground, "Hey, Ras, everything's okay, my mate, don't worry, everything's okay." So I jumped up, I said, "Hey, fool, don't worry, Ras, everything's okay." So I said, okay. Lay down on the concrete, looking up at the darkness. Within 10 minutes, I unlocked my door. God, and that noise just goes right through you. Checked me in my clothes, said the officer in charge wants to see you. So I go out into the blinding sun, across the courtyard, up the stairs to his office. And his exact words were, he said, "Hello, Russ." I said, "Hello, officer." He said, "Have you remembered the God's name yet?" I said, "No, officer." He said, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave it in God's hands. You can go back to your cell." And at the exact moment when I was praying, a sister was paying him $200 to get me out of there. It was a huge turning point in my spiritual walk. I'm very happy to say that Jesus is everything in my life today. Yeah. I have learned not to let past thoughts hurt me. The past only exists in your head. It can only come to life if you let it. Jesus said in Matthew 6:27, "Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life?" I was forced to live in the moment in prison, and it's one of the biggest lessons I still practice today. And to be able to find positives in all the negatives going on around me brought hope, which is a huge part of getting through prison life. It reminded me of the story of Job. That's me in Februarie Central Prison in 2010, 18 months after the cholera outbreak ended. I found it on the internet. It's a sad, lonely time in my life, but all in God's plans. Hope is the anchor of your soul. It's what kept me sane and grounded in there. Hope enabled me to see that there's light despite all the darkness. Let your hopes, not your troubles, shape your future. Now say it again. Let your hopes, not your troubles, shape your future. And never look for hope outside of yourself. To find it, you need to look within. We are made in the image of God. The answers are inside of us. You said to me in year 1, you're going home in year 3. I would have said never. I'm going home now. Like 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks I could live with. Anything beyond that was too painful. I counseled myself on how to think through the physical impact my thoughts had on me. You know, the thought of my fiancée with another oak, or my mates on fishing trips, or trips to Reno where we went every year, was too painful. I blocked those out until that peace returned. And finding happiness in even the smallest things that happened in prison kept me healthy. Those who couldn't died. Life in prison or in Las Vegas is still just life. It's what you make of it, no matter where you are. I had everything I could ever wish for, and in moments, it was all gone. Why you should forgive. James 1, verse 19 and 20. Everyone should be quick to listen and slow to speak. For a man's anger does not bring about the righteous life that God desires. Like I said earlier, many of us carry anger and resentment because of unforgiveness. The humiliation of being labeled a murderer in terrible conditions were extremely hard to deal with, as was the pain of my bitterness, anger, hatred, frustration, and revenge for what they'd done and are doing to me. I hated them bitterly, and initially was I there for hours, wishing every terrible thing on each of them in turn, the poacher, the police, the judge, the ministry, and all who were involved in my conviction. Then one day, I was struck by the realization that they'd all forgotten about me long ago. Here I was, consumed by the unfairness of it all, and they, blissfully unaware of the evil I wished on them every day. In the end, I was only hurting myself. I was carrying all that in my head and beating myself up for nothing. The single biggest lesson I learned in prison was true forgiveness. And for me, it is bigger than anything I could have achieved on my own. True forgiveness was inspired by God Almighty. And so was letting go. It was a huge weight off my shoulders. And I learned to live in the moment from then on. The past was too painful, and the future full of unkept promises. So I just dealt with each day as it was. I learned to have faith, because no amount of worrying was going to change what I was going through. If you have anger or resentment towards anyone in any way, it will eventually destroy you. Because that is what those emotions do. They steal from you. They steal happiness and freedom. Jesus said in Matthew 6:14, "For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your Heavenly Father will also forgive you." And many people ask me how I managed to forgive them for what they did to me. And I remember the exact moment, walking in that exercise yard, and I was just tired of all the anger, hatred, and bitterness. It was draining me daily. And I remember looking up, I remember it like yesterday. I looked up, and I just said to myself, I said, "Lord, take care of them, and let me get through this road that's been put in front of me. What goes around comes around, they will get what they deserve." And I had the names there, because Mugabe was part of the whole thing, and the other guys that were involved. I put the names attached. I said, "Lord, that's your story." Once I accepted that, my life in prison changed. And it wasn't a gradual process. It was an instant mindset shift. I felt it on the inside. Forgiveness doesn't change the person that hurt you. Forgiveness changes you. Yeah. And you can look at it in two ways. You can forgive, forget, and move forward, or you can retain, remember, and regret. The choice is yours. And if you say, "I'll forgive, but I'll never forget," then you still remember and will never move forward. And I'm not saying forget the lessons learned from the incident. Just don't revisit the incident. You can't bounce back from anything unless you forgive those who you believe have done you wrong. And only when you forgive and let go of the past can you be fully free to move forward with your full potential. Why you should be grateful and the big picture. Jesus said in Matthew 16:26, and what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your soul? Lose your own soul. Is anything worth more than your soul? What shall a man give in return for his soul? We all want too much in our lives, concentrating on what we haven't got instead of being grateful for what we have. And for me, giving thanks to God every day goes a long way. For my health, beautiful family, a lovely home, a soft bed, running water, and so on. When there's no food, no water, and people are dying all around you, you become grateful for the fact that you're still breathing. And another day is a blessing. When you lie in a cell with 78 other people, and your breath is not even your own, gratitude suddenly has a different meaning altogether. Accepting that what I went through cannot be changed, and being grateful for what it taught me has unlocked my vision for my future. The healthiest of all human emotions is gratitude. Remember that and practice it. Having an attitude of gratitude is one of the most impactful habits for a fulfilling and healthy life. I learned in prison to see the big picture of life. At the innocent age of 6, I was sent to a cruel boarding school, 200 k's away from home. The bullying by masters and matrons to a little 6-year-old boy was disgusting. We were only allowed to see our folks once every 3-month term. That was at half term. Even if your folks came to town, you weren't allowed to see them. It was supposed to upset the child, the colonial rules that were back then. I don't have good memories of my first 7 years at school. Then I lost my charismatic father at the tender age of 12 and endured the wild ways of the Rhodesian Bush War on cattle ranches throughout my teens. It was a wild era. Me crazy about rugby and water polo, both rough sports and the war environment, created a wild, hardy character. Hardships were part of everyday life. And I'm telling you this because I believe that resilience is something that is learned. You're not born with it. You're born with fortitude, not resilience. And I think that my rough upbringing stood me in good ground for what I had to go through in prison. My uncle and I left the ranch house one day. It was a summer's day back in '79. We were going to dip cattle 20 k's away on a ranch called Bundu Hills, in the middle of nowhere and deserted from the war, like most of the ranches were back then. It was part of the Metopus mountain range with its huge solid granite mountains everywhere. And the ranches averaged 25,000 acres each, so they were huge chunks of land. 1 k from the dip crawl, a troop of baboons ran across the road in front of the vehicle. And there were thousands of them back then, and they were considered vermin from the damage they did. So I jumped out the vehicle, no hat, no shirt, no shoes, with my rifle, just like that, and took off after them, shouting to my uncle that I'd see him at the dip crawl. 2 hours later, I was completely lost and in a full spin. I mean, there were just mountains in every direction. Just like that. There was thick vegetation in between. And by 6:30 that evening, 12 hours later, I was in a seriously bad situation. I mean, I was nothing to eat all day. I just managed to find a dried up muddy puddle for water with a dead giraffe in it. Tasted like death. Very sunburnt and exhausted. I hadn't stopped all day. And once again, I climbed up one of the many mountains, like that solid granite one there, looking for Mount Taula, which I knew and they could work out where I was. And there were just mountains and more mountains. And I remember the desperate fear and feeling of hopelessness. I mean, I was just a teenager back in 79, I was 18. I was all alone, middle of the war. And there wasn't a settlement within a 20k radius, and it was getting dark. The last thing this hardcore wild rugby player would ever consider back then was to pray. And I was okay, I didn't need help. Only those that need help go to church and pray. But I got on my knees on the side of that mountain, first time in my life, and prayed to God for help. And I remembered like yesterday, this feeling of like warm water being poured over me. And I had no idea what it was. So when it happened on death row, I knew exactly what was going on. And I stood up, and very calmly, just like being guided, I turned around and walked down that mountain. So remember, I was just a teenager, I was a kid. I had no church, never been to church, nothing like that. When I got to the bottom of that mountain where the solid granite went into the soil, was long grass. And I carried on walking, it was that thick bush like this. Carried on walking, within 10 meters, and I just walked like a zombie. Just like something was pushing me. There were 2 car tire tracks. My uncle had shot a kudu there during the rains the year before. I want to tell you the chances of that happening. This is 1979, totally undeveloped land. It's not like here. And it's thick bush, it's not cleared. There's no fences or roads anywhere near there. And I still didn't know that the Lord was there with me that day. I followed those tracks. When they faded, saw where they cut the trees to get the vehicle in, through all the trees. So we got to the dirt road where they were all lined up, waiting for my uncle and the farm workers, just as it was getting dark. You know, I never told anyone what happened on that mountain that day. I thought they'd laugh at me and think I was crazy or weak. That's how it was in those days. Sitting in the courtroom before I was sentenced, I prayed hard, up through the window into the clouds. Nothing happened. My first year in prison, I prayed hundreds of times to go home. Nothing changed. Now I wondered where God was time and time again. Then when I forgave them, walking that exercise out in the first year, I could feel that there was spiritual involvement there. But over the next years, conditions became unbearable. There were guys dying everywhere. There was no food, no water. One guy dying at my feet. I was the only one trying to help him. My fiancée left me. And I was promised I was going home for years, story after story. Just went on and on. So I stopped praying altogether. That didn't change anything for me. After 7.5 years, I had that incredible incident on death row. It changed my life forever. I still didn't go home for 2.5 years. But I knew there was something bigger in this big picture. You know, before prison, I was a big fish in Little Bulawayo, going nowhere, like a hamster on a wheel going round and round. And it was all about me. Money, my empire, more and more. And when is enough enough? And now, I'm a little fish in the whole wide world, making a huge difference. And it's not about me. It's about helping other people and making a difference in other people's lives. And I now have a purpose. And the satisfaction I get from helping others far outweighs the millions I was making before. And the lesson here is, no matter what hardships you're going through in life, just remember, you're being prepared for where you're going. The Lord has a plan for each and every one of us. I wish I could express the happy, bubbly, exciting, beautiful feeling I felt as I walked out those prison gates to freedom after 10 years of hell. People don't appreciate freedom. And I've realized that even when we're not in prison, there are ways in which we imprison ourselves. So our business partnerships, badly selected careers, being obsessed with money and ambition in the corporate world, even unhappy marriages. And it's only when you have your freedom completely taken away, do you realize in many ways that you are actually in prison too. When I look back on it all, it makes me wish I could somehow get through to people how precious and priceless freedom is. If you look at your life as it is, how free are you within your circumstances? Freedom is not just not being in prison. Freedom is the ability to make a choice and act on it. Freedom is letting go of what you can't control. Freedom is forgiveness. Freedom is being free from negativity. Freedom brings health. If you can be free in all areas of your life, then you'll reach your full potential. I want to take you back to the year 2000, the year of the incident. In the top left picture, on the far left, is my client, Ray Anthony. He's a billionaire from Pittsburgh. We're flying in his private jet from Fort Lauderdale to Tampa, Florida, where we collected General Norman Schwarzkopf. He was the officer commanding of the United States Armed Forces during the Gulf War, the most powerful man in the world at the time. We were flying to Reno to attend the Safari Club International Convention together. It was a huge privilege. On the top right, on safari there with Glenn Dubin and Louis Bacon, two billionaires from New York. We spent many wonderful times on safari together. The bottom left, in a V8 Ferrari, that was my car in Miami for a month. Bottom right, on a private yacht in Fort Lauderdale. My life back then was all about private yachts, flashy cars, and mixing with billionaires. I thought I was invincible, flying high, thinking I was bulletproof. Unbeknown to me, my life was being controlled by ego, power, and money. And I didn't even know it. Satan had sunk his claws deep into my soul, and I had no idea. I was as far away from God as I could get. Make sure you're not living in that lost world too. The only place you'll find peace is with Jesus. Not another flashy car, houseboat, or another million. Going back to my teenage years, I was a wild teenager, make no mistake. Drinking, fighting, poaching, anything that pushed the boundaries of the law was fun. Never considering any consequences. But had I known during all those years what I know now, life would have been very different. You don't want to know what else I went through in prison. I had to fight for my life on many occasions. And it was by the grace of God that I came out alive. Thousands didn't. With all due respect, be very careful what company you keep in this world these days. Don't get mixed up with the wrong people and start pushing the boundaries of the law, because you don't want to go where I've been. There's no mercy in prison. None. It's real and it's rough. And I'll give Jesus all the glory for bringing me through that nightmare. After I was released, I went back into the safari business, working for guys that used to work for me, which was very humiliating, borrowing vehicles. I'd gone from the leader of the pack to starting again. But on safari, I met a CEO of a very large corporate here in South Africa. And after telling him my story, and that I had done a talk for about 100 farmers that had lost their farms in Horrendous, he asked me if I had a copy of that speech. So I said, yeah, it's on my phone. So he said, can I look at it? We're sitting around the fire, lots of red wine when I used to drink. And he flicked through the thing, and he said, I've got a new life for you, my friend, and I'm going to help you. So I thought, no, he's had a lot of wine. Anyway, the following day, while we were having lunch, on my phone I received an email of all the details that he had promised me the night before. And sure as anything, that same year he flew me to Joburg, to Pretoria, set up a PowerPoint presentation team, and I started motivational speaking. Going from little town to little town, Hoedspruit, Nelspruit, PE, all over. Lots of places in Joburg, Cape Town, Durban, just talking. And then a speaking bureau heard my story, and I was signed up as a premier speaker. But in that journey, I met my beautiful wife. And she was very close to God, always has been. Which brought me back to remembering what the Lord had done in my life. And making me start seeing that there's a bigger picture. And when I looked at the big picture in my life, I could see. We were very fortunate during those years to be helped unbelievably financially, supernaturally, with a lot of money. When I was in some trouble losing properties due to rates that had gone through the roof in Bulawayo. But one of the supernatural things was we were given a free trip, tourist trip to Israel. Now, I had a criminal record, so to go to Israel was like going to the moon. I got the visa, all the whole trip paid for. It was a fortune. And I wanted to share with you my experience there, because that trip changed my life. That got me to the Lord properly. And this was at Feast of Tabernacles. And I remember, before you go in there, there's 4,500 people at the Feast of Tabernacles, and there's a whole lot of lines, hundreds of people. And when you walk in, you get a little thing to eat and a drink. So I go through and I grab my graze and my drink, clap that down the drink, chucked it in the bin, and I walked like 2 meters waiting for my wife to finish. And this tall American guy walked up to me and he says, "Are you a pastor?" So I said, "No." So he's being friendly. He said, "The Lord's going to put a mantle on you." I said, "Oh, okay. And then he started prophesying over me. And then he turned to my wife and he started prophesying over her that she's going to cast out demons and all that other stuff. And then he turned to me and he said, Do you receive it?" I said, Yeah. So when we turned and walked away, I said to my wife, "What's a mantle?" I mean, I had no idea what was going on. But that was a big step, because I had been prophesied over a few times before. But at the Feast of Tabernacles, Angus Buchan was, thanks, Put. Angus Buchan was the speaker. And, he's an amazing speaker, and we listen to him every day. And at the end of the talk, his whole message was about the power of the Bible. And he made us all, 4,500 people, crowd the stage. So we had to leave our seats, take our stuff, and just all walk up and make a vow after him that we were going to read our Bibles every day. So I'm the kind of oak, if I make a vow, then I'm going to do it. So we got home, bought a Bible, and I started clapping that. And the first time I tried to read it was, I think, King James Version. It was like, yeah. But I got in NIV, and this is manly stuff. It was just all the wars and all that stuff. I loved it. Hammered it once and then started again. And then the revelation started coming to me. And that's where my spiritual walk really started moving. But in that journey, I got it put, it's changed. This is in the Dead Sea. And I don't know if any of you know, but the Dead Sea is 390 meters below sea level. So you get on your iPhone and you put what level you're at, altitude, and minus 390 meters. It's like, if the walls break here, we're done. But you go in there and you float, and there's no way of going down. If you go straight up, you bob from here down. You can't go. But it's very, very acidic. But what an experience. And then the garden tomb where Jesus was laid to rest. On the right is my wife coming out of the tomb. That's where the rock was put over. put this thing again. On the left of the picture is where they laid Jesus' body. When you go in there, your hair just stands up. It's an unbelievable feeling. And there's bars there, so I just put the phone through and took a picture. On the right are those 2,000-year olive trees. And I stood there thinking, I just wish I could talk to you, just what they had seen in their lives. This is Capernaum, the town of Jesus. And when you go in there and you see where he grew up, and all the foundations are all there, they fixed it all up. It's just amazing to see all that stuff. And this part was very emotional for me. That's the street where Jesus carried the cross. And just in front of it is a gate. You can't go further. That was something else to see all that. And this really changed my spirit when I could live it. I'm going to let you do it, Michael. This thing is driving me nuts. This was probably the highlight of my trip. So I was baptized in the River Jordan where John the Baptist baptized Jesus. And I always thought I'd come up and open my eyes and everything would be different, but it wasn't. It was a gradual process for me. It's different for everybody, but it was an amazing feeling. And then next one, that's my wife in the Sea of Galilee, in her element. We've had many supernatural encounters since then, financial encounters. And I'm running out of time because we're getting hungry. Next slide, Bud. When you go through what I endured, they break you, mentally and physically. Confidence, your spirit, your soul, everything. And to pick yourself up again, no matter how confident you were when you went in, is tough. I had huge wounds that for years I thought would never heal. And a massive void in my life that I thought would never be filled. But the moment I met Sandra, 7.5 years ago, I knew there was something very special about this lady. Within 3 years, the Lord used her to heal me completely and make me whole and content once again. Now, I could never have imagined the peace and happiness that I now experience every day. I thank you, my love, and I thank you, Jesus. Next slide, Bud. The company you keep influences your thinking. Your thinking influences your character. Your actions influence your character. Your character determines your destiny. In conclusion, I was fortunate. I'd made it big, was very successful. And possibly during that time, I became a bit arrogant. But that experience has made me realize that I'm just a normal human being. That you can't value your life based on your title, your success, or your material possessions. If you had everything taken away from you right now, who would be left? What would people see looking at you as a person? We need to look at our core values more deeply and see how we can change lives and maybe make a difference in this world. For many years, I asked myself why I had to go to prison. Why me? What did I ever do to deserve all that? About 4.5 years ago, I had a deep spiritual revelation that I was supposed to go to prison. And I must accept that I had to go through that. It was tough to understand, but I now see how the Lord drew me away from that outdoor safari life that I loved so dearly to find my purpose. He has taken me from a humble upbringing to great success, mixing with the world's elite, flying in private jets across the world, etc. Then being put through that nightmare and losing everything I'd worked my whole life for. But He has prepared me for this calling. And I thank God for my 10 years in prison. Believe it or not, I do. because I'm a better person now than I would ever have been. I don't know how to explain this, but I know 100% that God has redeemed me. And I'm a better person now than I would ever have been had I not gone to prison. I'm stronger, I know God better, I understand people more, and I believe He's made me able to reach out to people, to tell them that God is out there. He loves you, He's got a plan for you, and don't ever doubt that. Do you think anyone can ever fully recover from a terrible setback in life? Well, you're looking at someone that did. You're looking at living proof that you can recover from whatever life throws at you. God will answer your prayers, He'll set your feet back on the ground, and He'll give you a beautiful life. Just put your faith in Jesus and walk with Him every day. Amen.